Hello, worlds. Welcome to Civilly Savage, where our goal is to help wake people up, as I believe that most people are but a mere shadow of who they could be. Before we get started, be forewarned that I tend to speak very bluntly and have a tendency to use lots of colorful adjectives, so be careful of your surroundings when you watch or listen. My goal is not to offend, but to empower. But as no one likes the person with the mirror, I'm also very okay with people not liking what I say. So, without further ado, it's time to start trimming the wool and pulling up whatever grown up pants you happen to associate with. It's time to get civilly savage. Hello, everyone. This is a video long time coming. I've been in the mental health field, specifically dual diagnosis, which means that I work with both mental health and substance abuse for 12 or 13 years now. And everywhere I go, everyone's always asking me, Chad, why do you want to change the 12 steps? What do you have against the 12 steps? Well, I thought writing a book about it, my book, The 12 Steps 2.0, updating, I thought that would answer the question. But as people don't want to read much more than a meme, I still get lots of questions about why am I trying to replace the 12-step model? Like whatever. First, don't get it twisted. My book, The 12 Steps 2.0, is not my model. I'm still working on the book that explains my model. The 12 Steps 2.0 is merely evidence-based research, papers, reality, known truths about all of the issues with the 12 steps. That's why I wrote it. I wrote it for you guys because it broke my heart with the thousands of people that I've had in my groups, in my one-on-one sessions. They all asked a version of one basic question because I would teach my model. I would educate. It is very holistic. It is very person-centered. It is very empowering. And they would all ask, Chad, if this is true, which it is, how come I've never heard this before? Why is this the first time I'm hearing this? I heard this from thousands and thousands of people. Like I said, basically everybody that took my course, my therapy, my group would ask that very same question. Why have I never heard this before? I've been to rehab 12 times. I can teach the prison 12-step programs. Why am I just now hearing about this? Why are you now hearing about it? Because the model is outdated. It is part of the reason why there is a known evidence-based treatment gap in our country. The 12 steps is the predominant model used across the US, and it is outdated, it is inaccurate, it is detrimental, and it is just flat wrong in many of its topics. That does not mean that everything about the 12 steps is wrong or that everything in the 12 steps is detrimental, which is why I wrote the book to just update the outdated, limited, unempowering, incorrect shit in the model. That's all I did. So, because of all the questions, because of all the flack, because of all the feedback, I'm going to give you my 12 reasons, 12 steps, 12 reasons why the model should be updated. Outside of the fact that all of the known evidence-based treatment issues that are known. So, number one, let me ask. So you're totally recovered, yes? Like, you don't have to go to meetings anymore? You're not holding a sponsor's hand. You're living a full life. You're not abstaining from every substance around you. You're not in fear of relapse anymore. You're fully recovered. Oh, you're not. I wonder why. Maybe because they don't even teach that that's possible. That is, in my opinion, the number one and only needed reason to update it. The fact that they teach that you're always going to be this way, that that you have an incurable, progressive, relapsing, lifelong brain disease is incorrect, folks. We know this. Research. It's called, like, they hide information like that in books. Read more about all of that in my book, The 12 Steps 2.0. Number 2, only their way works. So, number 1, we know harm reduction models work. We know that the SMART program works. We know that SOS works. We know that Women for Recovery works. We also know that there's these things in real life that are seen as heresy within the 12 steps, like aging out, maturing out, natural recovery, spontaneous remission are actually real things here in the real world. The biases, which is what they are, that say things like, well, I've never known anybody that didn't recover from a 12-step meeting. How many SMART meetings have you attended for years to see what their recovery is like? How many SOS meetings have you actually participated in? How many Women for Recovery, Women for Sobriety programs have you hung out in long enough to see? How many therapeutic sessions have you sat in where you saw that person recover? Probably not many, if any, which is why you haven't seen those programs work, because you're not part of them. Professional bias, personal bias, much. Number 3, it works. Such a fucking dumbass reason. It works is like saying a horse-drawn carriage also works to get you from one side of the country to the other, which is a truth. It does work. However, even a 4-year-old can see that a McLaren with Pirelli P0 tires has been a bit of an improvement on the horse-drawn wagon. Yes? Four. You realize that the 12-step model was created before the first computer was created. Yeah? You know that, right? Like everybody talks about that in group. Oh, it was created back in 1936, which was before the first computer. So they decided, and have not updated since, what the brain was like and how addiction was before they could do CAT scans, before they could watch the brain in real time with fMRI imaging. They also decided what the treatment model needed to be while psychology was still in just its behavioral stage. We hadn't even got to cognitive behavioral. There would be no CBT back then because cognitive behavioral therapy didn't even exist. Psychology wasn't even thinking about thinking yet. There were no understandings of the placebo effect and what your thoughts on your body and mind actually did. This was before 40 years of research on the link between childhood trauma and later substance use. which is creating our new stress model. There were no longitudinal studies that showed that, surprise, surprise, about 75% of those with addiction issues recover all by themselves without even the use of AA or NA, which kind of shoots the whole idea of this is incurable and progressive and you have to do it our way out of the water now, doesn't it? All of this research, especially the longitudinal studies, made even institutions like the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism revamp their outlook and how they saw and treated alcohol use and alcohol issues. But not AA. No, AA couldn't be bothered to update their program. People should be celebrating the fact that you're not stuck with this forever. People should be celebrating that, holy shit, there's a way out of this, instead of fighting against change. Number 5. Why is there AA and NA? Have you ever asked yourself that? If addiction is addiction, why is there AA and NA? Why do those in Alcoholics Anonymous think that they are a higher class addict than those that use drugs? I just want to point out at this point in time that it is most likely the drug ethanol that has you off kilter. So perhaps you're not quite as high of an addict as someone that might use meth or cocaine or heroin. Just that separation in and of itself shows the staggering biases and the blatant misunderstandings or just plain ignorance about what addiction really is. That is why it needs to be updated. Number 6, how much have we learned about the brain since 1936? There are some people in neuroscience that talk about we have learned more about the brain in just the last 10 years than we have in the last 100 years combined. And yet, despite the leaps in neuroscience, despite entirely new fields like psychoneuroimmunology, despite totally paradigm-changing discoveries like epigenetics and nutrigenomics, the 12 Steps has yet to update their understandings about the whys and the hows and the what is possible in their model. Do you even know what neuroplasticity is and why that is so important for you to understand in recovery? That's why the model needs to be updated. Number 7, how much have we learned about psychology? Like I said, when AA was created, we were still in the behavioral model. We hadn't even got into the cognitive side of psychology yet. Have you heard of the treatments IFS, internal family systems, or ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy? Both of those are having amazing success overseas. I know some little groups here in the US that use them. Have you heard them? They work amazing for addiction. How come you've never heard them? Have you heard of contingency management? That is the #1 treatment model for here in the US for substance use. If you haven't heard of contingency management, if you're not in contingency management, maybe you should ask yourself, Why not? If it's the #1 treatment model here in the US for those that are dealing with substance use issues. Have you heard of the Rat Park study? That was 40 years ago plus, where we first started understanding that what we thought we knew about addiction was incorrect. Have you heard about it? Do you know about it? This is why people in my programs were like, how come I've never heard about any of this? Because the model needs to be updated. Number 8. Do you even know why you believe what you believe? Do you know why it was considered a disease? Do you know who said it was? It actually started out as just being disease-like. There was one scientist researching addiction and was like, man, this is kind of like a disease. Well, the American Medical Association, backed by several doctors who just happened to have failing rehabs, pushed to make it a disease. You know what else the American Medical Association deems a disease? In 2013, they declared obesity a disease. Do you know why they declared obesity a disease? To bring more attention to it, to make it billable by insurance, to help those in need. Do you think that the American Medical Association back in the 1960s might have done the exact same thing with alcoholism? I think they might have. Did you know that they didn't declare addiction a disease until the 80s? Just food for thought. Did you know that you could buy heroin and cocaine at Sears clear up until about 1913? It just happened to coincide with the invent of the time clock. Perhaps there's some social conditioning and social structures that played a role in what you're currently following. Just perhaps, maybe. Number 9, as to why we should update the 12-step model. Did you know that there is a current known evidence-based treatment gap with those in substance use? Probably in other stuff as well. Did you know that there's entire groups of researchers and scientists out there that want to update the disease model? Did you know that there's entire groups of researchers and scientists out there that want to totally scrap the disease model? Did you know that there are a lot of even programs that follow the biopsychosocial model, not the disease model? And did you know that there is an entirely new model, the stress model, that is linked to the 40 years of research on the correlations with early abuse, early childhood abuse, and later on substance use? Did you know all that? Did you know there were other models besides just the 12-step model? That's why it needs to be updated. So this brings me to number 10. Why don't you want to change the model? Are you more worried about being right? Or are you more worried about trying to recover? Or is it that you just don't want to be responsible for your life? Some people have said, well, we don't want to change because of tradition. Okay. The military is full of tradition, yet they don't ride horseback with muskets to their military engagements anymore. This brings me to number 11. Imagine not updating other aspects of our life with the same resistance of updating the 12 steps. Imagine your governor or congressman or president being able to enact prima nocte, where you get married and they get to come have sex with your wife. Wouldn't that be cool to still have engaged? What about drapetomania, which was why slaves wanted to run away, because people couldn't understand why they wanted their freedom. What about slaves in general? Let's go back to that, right? Lots of people thought that was a good idea. Lots of people said that worked. What about women not having any rights? Hell, today we don't even know what a woman is, so why give anybody any rights? Let's go back to good old public hangings. Those worked, probably worked better than our current prison and correctional system. Let's go back to that. Let's not educate the masses. Why waste all of that money on educating everyone? Of course, we could say that we're going back to that by dumbing down our population, but that's a whole nother talk. Specific to mental health, how about we go back to good old shock therapy treatments? You have some depression, you have some anxiety, you have PTSD, let's shock you. Maybe just lobotomize you. And we definitely don't want the next generation to deal with your issues, so let's euthanize you while we're at it. And if that doesn't work, we'll just lock you up. Or, as they used to do way back in the day, when they thought you had a mental illness because you were possessed, we'll just burn your ass at the stake. Last but not least, on my 12 steps of why they should be updated, number 12, which is the title of my book, The 12 Steps 2.0. I'm not suggesting we remove them. I'm suggesting we update them because they are outdated. They are inaccurate. They are limited. They are non-empowering. They are detrimental. So why not update them? And I ask you, finally, why did you upgrade your phone? Why did you upgrade your TV? Why did you upgrade your computer? Didn't they work?